talk about the third subtype for ISFJs. We've talked about the dominant. We've talked about the creative. Now let's talk about the normalizing subtype.
Okay. So this is the ISFJ that probably knows they're an ISFJ. This is more I would say the stereotype in people's minds. These ISFJs are careful, caring, conservative. They're responsible protectors. And they are, they're good at sort of merging with the rest of society. Unlike the creative type that we just talked about that tends not to have the wiring of being like the diligent worker, this is the exact opposite. This is the ISFJ that totally has that brain wiring. They're very much diligent and good citizens and good workers. Yeah. And they tend to be very linear in their thinking. They are good at sort of understanding how to work through a thought process, but it takes time. So unlike the dominant ISFJ that makes faster decisions, or the creative ISFJ that kind of bounces around a little bit more and sort of is more open-ended, this is an ISFJ that takes in information, doesn't make really fast decisions on it until it really thinks it through. And so they are, they're very reflective. They have a very strong reflective side. But they're also good with their senses, right? They're sensing types. They have good body awareness. They're usually good at using language. They're good, at least understanding reason through language. They might not be proficient communicators in the sense that they're verbose, but they can usually get what another person is talking about. They have high listening comprehension. And they usually are good at being attentive to details and facts in a situation, particularly like the emotional tenor of a situation, or maybe even its artistic merits, right? Like being able to size up a situation and kind of be able, know whether or not that's going to be pleasing to others. So they are specialists as a general rule. They tend to have specialized careers. And so some of them, some of the common ones are things like accounting, anything in charity, editing, fine arts, library science. Librarian was on your list.
Library
Nursing.
Science?
Library science. That's what they call it.
I just realized that's probably an entire, in like universities, research facilities. That's probably when they're talking about a career as a librarian. Mm-hmm. That's what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. Something gets you that like advanced paper you're looking for to do something for your PhD. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I'm bearing out my ignorance of the
this
world
whole
of
library thing is just throwing you for
of the world of libraries.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to like find this. I'm like, okay, I gotta figure out this library thing.
Somehow the fact that librarians require a master's degree is just blowing your mind.
Yeah.
There's like this whole world, because that wouldn't be the
yeah.
case unless there was like a whole world of information to be known, and
Yes.
you haven't quite tapped into what that could be.
Yes.
Somebody needs they need to educate you. Somebody, whoever is a librarian that's listening, if you are a librarian, come let Joel know why it requires a master's degree.
Yes.
And so he can finally close this loop. All right. So librarian was on there. Nursing, which was the very first thing that you mentioned, but also anything in psychology is usually kind of interesting to people of this type. And then, administrative assistants or secretarial work. I also noticed that technical writer was on the list of, what might appeal to this sort of ISFJ. So these are like the conscientious hard workers that are good at their job and like to be specialists in their field. So they're people who can almost fit anywhere and really excel at it.
So you might have said this and I blanked out in the midst of you saying this, but the stereotype also is, and I'm saying there's a stereotype. I don't know if this is true, but a career choice for an ISFJ would be a stay-at-home parent to maintenance a house, whether a dad, mom,
sure,
they'd stay home and manage the home front. And it's not a paid career, but I think it's got the same requirements as a career.
For sure.
I didn't see that on the list. Did you skip over it, or is it?
I didn't mention it, but what's so fascinating about that is it's almost like you have precog. There is one thing that is noteworthy about this kind of ISFJ,
okay.
And that is no matter what kind of career or job they pursue, home is where the heart is. This is an ISFJ that is very devoted to family, to their close friends, to community and community work. So even if they have a career in something they really enjoy, their heart is with their family, the community, and that sort of thing. So they're never going to be all 100% in on any career unless it's something like that. So I think, like a stay-at-home parent or somebody who manages a home, that's something that would very much, be up this style of ISFJ's alley.
Yeah. And the other thing that comes up for that is in our new modern world where so much work is done from home online, there's a unique opportunity for maybe an ISFJ to have a sense that their career and their home are in the same place now. And maybe that's a very interesting development going forward that we haven't really gotten to see as much.
Yeah.
But based on technology now, that's possible.
Yeah. As I mentioned, this type is probably the type that knows they're an ISFJ, but they could think that they have ISTJ preferences. There's some crossover there. And they are quirky. All ISFJs are a little quirky. And they're no different, but they are a little suspicious of anything that flies over their head. So it's like they're quirky to a point. But yeah, so I can get into the technical stuff. I can be the geek.
Yeah. So the neurotransmitter is serotonin.
Right.
And what do the two function attunements look like?
So for normalizing subtypes, it's the reverse of the creative. It's the perceiving function that is holistic and the judging function that's analytic. So in this case, introverted sensing or memory is going to be the more holistic, open, sort of receptive function. And that makes sense because they're receiving information about culture and how culture is around them. And then they're filtering it through the judging function of extroverted feeling or harmony as their analytic function. So once they sort of figure out that reflective side that takes in information and really ruminates over it. Well, once they figure out how to sort it, then they're very analytic about making sure that it gets established the way that, that it should be, right? Like this is how this should play out. So I'm going to be a champion for making sure it happens.